agonizing wait for identity, the fight for dignity in death, doctors knee-deep in heartbreak. NDTV live from Forensic Center, a sorrowful quest for DNA match. Science and sorrow at Ahmedabad Hospital. Doctors fight to give ID to remains.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. An action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. The conflict between Israel and Iran intensifies as the countries exchange fresh strikes and warned of further attacks. We are in a state of war, an Iranian official has said, while an Israeli military official said the country's onslaught on Tehran would not stop for a moment. Amid heightened tensions in the Middle East between two regional powers, Israel and Iran, the Embassy of India in both countries shared helpline numbers to stay in touch with Indian nationals and also considered relocating Indian students to safe zones. The G7 summit begins in Canada as the conflict between Israel and Iran looms over the already fraught gathering. This year's meeting, which brings together the leaders from the 7 largest industrialized democracies, has been characterized as the G6 versus Trump. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is contemplating about adding travel restrictions for 36 more countries. Some of them are close US partners like Egypt. This is what local reports highlight. And Britain's MI6 will be led by a woman for the first time in the Foreign Intelligence Service's 116-year history. A big focus while the sky over Haifa lit up in flames hours after massive explosions ripped through the heart of Tehran. It's actually day 3 of a war that's no longer just shadow play. This is an open conflict between Iran and Israel, and it's spiraling. In Israel's seaside town of Bat Yam, apartment blocks lie in ruins and at least 14 people are dead, many of them women and children. This after Iran launched over 70 ballistic missiles in one of the most direct assaults on Israeli cities in modern history. But the human cost is even more staggering in Iran. Over 224 people killed, 1,400 injured, and Iran claims 90% are actually civilians. Missiles have struck everything from defense ministry sites in Shiraz and Isfahan to residential squares in Tehran. Israel says Iran started it. Iran says Israel struck first, targeting top military commanders, nuclear scientists, even the foreign ministry building. But now analysts are arguing that the US President Donald Trump is playing both arsonist and firefighter, to quote some analysts. In fact, Donald Trump has said, if we are attacked by Iran, the full strength of the US armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. As G7 leaders fly into Canada, diplomatic channels are heating up, and the ask will stop Trump from pulling the US into this full-blown regional war. We have a reaction from Netanyahu lined up for you. Listen in.
הטייסים הנפלאים שלנו מעל טהרן. טהרן בוערת. אבל אנחנו מכוונים לא לאזרחים, אם כי אמרנו להם להתפנות. הם מתפנים. בפינוי המוני. זה קורה עכשיו. אתם לא שומעים את זה, כי האיראנים מסתירים את זה. אבל זה מה שקורה. אבל הם, לעומת זאת, הם תוקפים, מפציצים את האזרחים שלנו. בתמרה, בתל אביב, בראשון לציון, ברחובות, בכל מקום. אנחנו כמובן פועלים אחרת.
For an expert's view on the matter, we have with us currently on NDTV James Bowden, Arab and Middle East expert. James, always a pleasure to have you on our show. 3 straight days of heavy missile fire, key generals dead, nuclear facilities hit. Would you argue that this is now past the point of return?
Definitely. We have seen tensions rise to this current conflict level, and they have plateaued. I don't really see anything as having truly escalated, but definitely we are in a full-out conflict.
James, would you still say this is a limited conflict, a limited war? Is this a regional freefall that's being disguised as surgical warfare?
I really don't see it as a regional war. In order to get to that point, we would have to see a larger number of countries enter in.
Okay.
We have seen Jordan, we have seen Syria intercept or be willing to intercept missiles, but those are all coming from Iran. They are not fighting against Israel. And so if it is a regional war, it is the region engaging against Iran. So yeah, that term is very tricky. It really is a long-distance war between Israel and Iran.
Meanwhile, Iran says, James, that America currently is complicit. Is this already a US proxy war, or is Tehran trying to drag Washington in? Where do you think Donald Trump stands currently? Who's really calling the shots?
I really don't know. I was having this conversation earlier today. It seems like Donald Trump has been on both sides of the issue. At one moment, he wants to retreat from the war and he wants to make sure that America is not involved. And then the next moment, he's almost got this, hey, wait up for me, guys, kind of attitude to this type of war. And, we're having to take Donald Trump's temperature each and every day to see where he's at, to try to get to some level of consistency. And I would definitely say that the United States likely has been providing some intelligence support, satellite imagery, maybe even some transport, but I don't see the United States as being inherently or intrinsically involved in this conflict. This is largely Israel acting on their own and acting really against the United States. Donald Trump wanted basically what was shaping up to be the JCPOA 2.0. And the Israelis stepped in and took that from him. And I think that he is very upset about that. And there are a lot of people in Washington that are kind of tugging him both ways. I would really assess that a lot of times the statements that you hear or read about on Truth Social come about from the last person he talked to. So if he talked to somebody who's in favor of strikes, then he's coming out and saying, we're going to back Israel. If somebody goes to him and says, no, we can't do that, we've got to pull back, then he's like, oh, yeah, we've got to pull back. This Donald Trump is very different than the one that we dealt with in the first presidential term, very indecisive.
In fact, James, it's this very fickle-mindedness that Iran is flagging to say that they have serious trust issues with the US president as we speak. But oil prices are up, gold is rallying. We'll have to wait and see what kind of global economic fallout or impact this has. As always, though, thanks so much, James, for joining us. We'll, of course, keep in touch with you. Now, amid the tension, India is taking precautions. Well, India is mulling the evacuation of all our nationals from Iran as the West Asia crisis deepens. Now, as per estimates, about 3,000 to 4,000 of our nationals are in the country. Many of them are Kashmiri students. And just yesterday, early on Sunday, the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir spoke to Dr. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, to discuss the safety of Kashmiri students in the war-torn country. The government is considering relocating Indian students to safe zones. There has been a latest advisory that's been issued. The embassy has reassured us that they are in touch with local leaders and they are considering evacuations from Iran. We have some reactions lined up for you. Listen in.
At this point, हमारे जो भाई हैं तेहरान यूनिवर्सिटी के जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनकी बॉयज डॉम के नज़दीक ही हमला हुआ है एंड दे हैव आल्सो बीन अफेक्टेड बाय द अटैक और कुछ जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं वो जख्मी भी हो गए हैं सो वो हालत हमारी भी ना हो जाए उससे पहले प्लीज हमें इवैक्यूएट कर दिया जाए क्योंकि इस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे ना हमें वाटर सप्लाई है डॉम की ना नेट इंटरनेट इज़ वेरी वीक, इंटरनेट बिल्कुल भी नहीं चल रहा है, ना मैसेज जा रही है, ना आ रही है, ना प्रॉपर्ली कम्युनिकेट कर पा रहे हैं हम किसी से भी। और ऑन टॉप ऑफ दैट अभी शायद इलेक्ट्रिसिटी भी चली जाएगी और उसके बाद हमारा वाईफाई भी डाउन हो जाएगा, जिसपे हम अभी थोड़ा बहुत इंटरनेट चला रहे हैं और उसके बाद हम शायद बिल्कुल भी कम्युनिकेट ना कर पाए। तो प्लीज़ आई रिक्वेस्ट LG मनोज सिन्हा, NCM उमर अब्दुल्ला कि हमें जल्द से जल्द इवैक्यूएट कर दिया जाए।
My colleague Mohammed Ghazali has been tracking all the latest developments for us. He joins us live currently. Ghazali, as we were discussing earlier, is this just tit for tat, or are we already in the middle of a full-blown regional conflict? Are experts calling this a full-blown regional war?
Well, certainly it's a full-blown regional war. Both sides have been attacking at different sectors, be it the economic centers, the defense centers, as well as civilian infrastructure has come under attack in both the countries. More than 200 people have been killed in Israel. More than 10 people are reportedly killed in Iran. More than 200 people have been killed in Israel. More than 10 people have been killed, and continued attacks are being reported from both countries. Just a short while ago, Iran launched ballistic missiles towards Israel, hitting the targets or hitting areas in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and other areas in the country. Meanwhile, through the day yesterday, Israel continued its aerial strikes on oil depots, on refineries, on manufacturing units, on pipelines. Water pipelines were damaged in Tehran and neighboring areas. In and around the national capital, Iran as well. And despite it was being expected that perhaps the U.S. now, after Mr. Trump and Putin spoke, it was expected that perhaps U.S. will pressurize both sides to stop the war. But it appears that even U.S. is siding with Israel, which is not surprising. But it now will start impacting the world economy, because Iran is also threatening that it will block the Strait of Hormuz, one of the very key points through which the maritime trade towards Asia and other regions are dependent on. It will also impact the oil supply to India and other countries.
Right.
So we'll have to see that how far Iran and Israel can drag this war, for how many days it will be stretched, because that will test the limits of this war. And we'll also have to wait to see whether U.S. will pressurize its key ally in the Middle East,
Indeed.
Israel, to stop the attack on Iran, who had actually started this war.
Ghazali, all eyes are on the key developments. As always, thank you so much for joining us with the latest. Meanwhile, the G7 summit began in Canada on Sunday as the conflict between Israel and Iran looms over the already fraught gathering. This year's meeting, which brings together the leaders from the 7 largest industrialized democracies, has been characterized, and I quote, as the G6 versus Donald Trump, with officials expected to pressure US President Donald Trump on trade as well as Russia. In fact, you must note that one Canadian official actually said that it's like preparing the red carpet for Godzilla. Even so, the escalation in the Middle East could expose fresh divisions. The UK and France have urged restraint, while Japan has condemned Israeli strikes, and Trump, as you know, has called them excellent. The leaders will now try to influence Trump's handling of the conflict, given Washington's leverage over the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, something my colleague Mohammed Ghazali has been highlighting as well. My colleague Maha Siddiqui has been tracking the latest as far as the G7 summit is concerned. What can we expect? Well, listen in to Maha's report.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
From an annexation threat,
I might go up with that tariff in the not-too-distant future,
to punishing tariffs that threaten to cripple the Canadian economy. US President Donald Trump has deployed an economic shock and awe strategy against America's former beloved neighbor. But under a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and on their soil, Canada would like to respond at the G7 summit.
We're focused on the issues. We're still facing and intensifying unjustified tariffs from our largest trading partner. And the best way to respond to that is to respond at home, to build strength at home.
While the G7 summit in Kananaskis is drawing immense attention to see how President Trump tees off on a land that many believe he's coveting for its resources. However, there's another bilateral equation that is being watched with equal, if not more interest.
Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me?
These two men will meet during the G7 summit after 2 years of frosty ties between New Delhi and Ottawa.
Ready to build Canada strong.
Prime Minister Carney extended an invitation to India a week ahead of the G7 summit in Canada. Prime Minister Modi accepted the invite, and what followed was Carney defending his decision in the face of mounting scrutiny from both domestic critics and international observers.
Fifth largest economy in the world, effectively the most populous country in the world, central to a number of those supply chains, at the heart of a number of those supply chains, so it makes sense.
India's global economic stature is not the only reason why it will be at G7. For host Canada, mending ties with India is critical right now. Facing betrayal from the United States, Canada is looking to diversify its trade relationships. India is one of the three big economies of the region, apart from China and Japan. Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy of 2022 highlighted the significance of India in the world's fastest-growing region. Indo-Pacific accounts for more than one-third of the global economic activity and is projected to represent half of the world's GDP by 2040. Bilateral equations apart for Prime Minister Mark Carney, successfully securing a G7 statement in the face of an unpredictable President Trump, diverging priorities of the G7 members because of the trade upheaval caused by the United States, and the geopolitical tensions will remain a challenge. In Canada, this is Maha Siddiqui for NDTV.
In fact, my colleague Maha Siddiqui joins us live as well for a quick update on what to expect today. Maha, this year's meeting, many analysts say, has been characterized as the G6 versus Trump. Take us through the plan of action and what to expect today.
Absolutely, Parmeshwar. The explanation by many critics, observers, as far as this G7 summit is concerned, pitting all against Donald is a very descriptive, considering the fact that that Donald Trump's tariffs have really thrown everybody in the G7, all the countries, and as well as the EU in G7, completely at this moment in a dizzy. The impact on Canada, as we have seen, is well documented already, considering there are job losses that we are talking about, especially in the sectors of where steel and aluminum is needed and required, as well as in sectors like automobiles. There are already people who have lost their jobs. And Mark Carney is pretty clear on this aspect that this is an issue that he does not want the G7 summit to fall prey to, but an important issue that is going to be taken up, considering that the European countries also want, as well as the EU, of course, also want to take this up with President Donald Trump. But what we hear and what we understand at the moment is President Trump's own interest in a multilateral forum like the G7 or a grouping like G7 is waning, and he is looking at this platform in Kananaskis as more of a bilateral engagement platform. We understand that he will be holding bilateral meetings with certain countries, and that he is likely to use this tool of tariffs that he has unleashed across many countries to be used as a negotiating tool. So this is as far as what we are expecting in the G7.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for highlighting what to expect. We'll, of course, revert to you for regular updates. We're slipping into a short break, but coming up, Prime Minister Modi's Cyprus power play. We'll unpack the significance with Dr. Brahmachalani right after this very short commercial break.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of maximum city is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti, also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
India's IT capital is always bustling, a city full of startups, stories and surprises. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengal.
And with that, let's shift our focus to the heart of the Mediterranean, where a powerful new chapter in India's foreign policy is unfolding. Prime Minister Modi on Sunday began his 5-day, 3-nation visit with a stop in Cyprus, marking the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the island nation in over 2 decades. He was received at the airport by the Cyprus president, but this visit isn't just strategic, it's also symbolic. Cyprus is among India's top 10 foreign investors, with billions flowing into tech, into shipping and energy, and a fresh defense agreement signed just last year. To unpack the significance of this entire visit, let's bring in Dr. Chelani, who's with us at the moment. Dr. Chelani, always a pleasure to have you on NDTV. It's the first Indian Prime Minister's visit in 23 years as far as Cyprus is concerned. Would you say this is a diplomatic routine or a strategic signal to Turkey and by extension to Pakistan?
It is clearly a strategic message to Ankara. Cyprus is small, but it's very important. It's important regionally, it's important to India's diplomacy. The fact is that Cyprus has been involved in a territorial dispute with Turkey since 1974, and India's growing engagement with Cyprus reinforces the coalition opposing Turkish expansionism. In terms of the bilateral aspects, we should not forget that unlike Turkey, which has a strategic and military nexus with Pakistan, Cyprus has long stood by India. It has long backed India's bid for a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. It is a country that is set to assume the presidency of the EU Council next year. It's country rich in gas, natural gas, though Turkey is obstructing Cyprus's gas exports. But I think India's engagement with Cyprus could enhance Cyprus's role in energy diplomacy while expanding India's footprint in the Mediterranean region and reinforcing the coalition opposing Turkish expansionism.
Just building on what you're saying, what does our Prime Minister Cyprus stopover then tell us, sir, about India's new appetite for muscular diplomacy, particularly after Operation Sindoor?
The message that Turkey is getting from India's engagement with Cyprus, that New Delhi is working to deepen its ties with Turkey's regional rivals. And these regional rivals include not just Cyprus, but Greece, Armenia, and Egypt. These 4 countries Greece, Armenia, Egypt, and Cyprus are all very important for Indian diplomacy. And greater Indian engagement with these countries is a clear signal to Turkey that its strategic and military alliance with Pakistan is not cost-free.
Right, as you are highlighting, Dr. Chelani, New Delhi is working to deepen its ties with Turkey's regional rivals, it seems. In terms of the order of Prime Minister Modi's visits, Cyprus, Canada, then Croatia, Dr. Chelani, what would you say the underlying message here is to NATO as well as the EU?
First, it's clear that India is a rising power. Its importance globally is being recognized by the fact that now every G7 summit has India present. The Indian Prime Minister is especially invited to a G7 summit. This reinforces India's global role. The G7 member states' share of the global GDP has been on decline, and the relevance of the G7 itself is being questioned in the West. So to stay relevant, the G7 needs non-Western countries like India. India is projected to remain the world's fastest growing major economy. And Modi's presence at the G7 summit reinforces the growing importance of India in any major international meeting. But Prime Minister Modi is going as a special guest, as a special invitee, and therefore, on the first day of the deliberations at the G7, normally tend to involve only the G7 states, the special invitees, and this time it will be also Zelensky as a special invitee to the G7 summit. They tend to participate on day 2 of the summit. But this provides an opportunity, for example, to Prime Minister Modi
Indeed.
to engage with other G7 states. And therefore, even though the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Alberta, Canada is going to be short, it's going to be a packed schedule for the Prime Minister because he'll be holding pull-asides, as they say it, pull-asides that is meetings on the sidelines with a number of G7 leaders, as well as perhaps with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine.
Well, all eyes will be on the G7 summit in Canada as well. For more than one reason, we'll of course keep in touch with you, Dr. Chelani, as always. Thank you so much for making time for us. Thank you so much for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
The last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Genzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have 2 credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong,
right,
and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Jaggi brothers. What did the money buy? Not EVs, of course, but a lavish flat in Gurgaon's luxurious DLF Carmelias.
After 2 years years of the India-Canada tensions. It's the big relationship reboot. Indian Prime Minister heads to the G7 summit. Indispensable India on the global stage. Modi's multilateral momentum. NDTV live from the G7 summit in Canada.
Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad, India's latest aviation disaster. India responds to the tragedy. Facts first, 100% ground reports.
Under this is the tail, Here and
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vaza. We have a whole lot lined up for you, including the latest as far as the Iran-Israel conflict is concerned. 224 people have died. And those are Iranian people. That is the claim that's being made by the ministry, the health ministry of Iran. 14 people have died in Israel. 100 missiles have been launched early this morning. We'll get you all the details. My colleague Ghazali is reporting from Ground Zero. We'll also be getting you the latest in regard to Ahmedabad, in which there are the claims that are being made as far as more bodies that have been handed over to the mortal remains to the family members, and amongst them, of course, will be the body of former Chief Minister of Gujarat. His last rites